I am Abigail, and I am 19 years old. The story I'm about to tell you is one that is so close to my heart. It is the story of one of the greatest men I have ever known, my grandfather, Scott. At the end of the story, you will have thought, there is hope yet for this mad world we live in. See, my father was an orphan. He had nothing to his name growing up. I'm not quite sure of what happened to his parents, my biological grandparents. Every time I or anyone asked him about it, it was always a different story. I doubt even my mother knows the truth. Whenever he was telling us about his parents died in a fire or a car accident or whatever else he could conjure up, you can tell from his voice he was struggling. From that, I reckon it must have been a really traumatic experience for him. I'm guessing that's why no one knows the true story. I have a feeling Scott does, though. Scott was a man my father ran into by luck. Remember I said that my father was an orphan? It happened that one day, while my father, a young child then, was hustling to put food in his mouth, he came across a man whose clothes looked very expensive, and his face like one who didn't have to struggle to get food. Right there and then, my father and a couple of other street boys quickly hatched a plan to steal this stranger's wallet. They were caught, unfortunately, or should I say, fortunately. I know this sounds all like something out of a movie, but it is what it is. Scott saved my father, but not just him and the other street kids too, when he invited them to his home and eventually adopted all of them. He saved them from a life that would have been undoubtedly full of hardship and struggle just for that better life. For an orphan with nothing, you can understand how hard it would have been to get out of that hell. And this is what Scott ultimately gave my father, a beautiful future. You must be wondering who Scott is by now. Scott was a rich man and perhaps the most kind-hearted man I know. The source of Scott's wealth came from the large farm that he owned. From this farm, he made a lot of money selling agricultural products like fruits and meat. But while Scott didn't have his own family to share his wealth with, he did, however, have 99 orphanage children that he shared it with. One of these children was my father. According to my father, Scott was a scholar and made sure to put enough cash into the education of his 99 legally adopted children. But education wasn't all Scott was about. He was a disciplinary as well. My father told me that one time, two of the boys had a fight over something very irrelevant while Scott had a visitor. Naturally, Scott was angry. But Scott is also known for his respect. On that day, he respected the fact that he had a visitor and only uttered an incomplete sentence to the two boys.
To your room.
Believe me, the conversation that later ensued between Scott and the two boys was one you never want to have. Scott had a way with words that would paint the full picture of your foolishness, and this he did with the calmest of voices. I know this because, like I said, I'm 19 years old, and Scott was a part of my life growing up, and I remember hating him for the calmness in which he spoke with. Looking back now, I'm thankful for every bit of it. His methods taught us all to be good people. That is the second greatest gift Scott gave us, of which we are all still thankful for. The highlight of this story, you can guess from the title, is Scott's generosity. Scott gave $100,000 to each of his children after they graduated from university, ensuring that even after his passing, none of them will have to struggle for anything. And so far, his plan has worked. My father started his own business, which is how he met my mom. She was the daughter of the man who owned the building my dad rented for his business. From there, they married, and boom, here I am. All of the other children also went to live their lives, but I'll be lying if I said they all made it. Despite the cash Scott gave them, some of them managed to lose it all. Scott didn't get mad, though. He still loved them, and every year we have this huge family gathering where we all go back to the farm just to see Scott. Scott is old now, and sick. It tears us all apart knowing nothing can be done to save him from cancer. A man who had done plenty, not just for his adopted children, but for everybody that came into contact with him. There's nothing his 99 children haven't tried to rid Scott of his disease. I know my dad has continuously donated money to research institutes to help in the fight against the disease, but nothing. We count the days knowing until he dies. We know the likely day Scott is going to pass away. If not anything, Scott will die a very happy man. I don't think there's quite anyone with the kind of treasure he would be leaving this world with. 99 good and well-educated children. Let's not even get started on his grandchildren. I hope that his kindness will be spread. I see him as a good person to learn from. How many people have you showed love and kindness to? Why not start today?